Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Pleasure Priority Podcast with me, Amber Taylor. This is the podcast all about how you can have the audacity to put yourself and your pleasure first, which ultimately shapes a life perfect for you. We discuss friends and family, career and money, oppression, healing, and mental health, current events, and historical ones too. Basically, all things life and pleasure and how you can create more of it authentically. I'm your host, Amber Taylor, and it's my pleasure to talk to you every week. Let's tune in. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Pleasure Priority Podcast. So last week, we talked about how your breakthrough is coming and you're closest to it when you are feeling like you're in the height of the storm. And we talked about how it can be like a snake shedding its skin. And right before that, the snake goes blind and everything turns blue in his eyes. And that's what allows him to shed that skin and become the new iteration of itself, the bigger version. And same for you. It gets scary and shitty right before the breakthrough happens, but you must keep going. And today we're going to be talking about post-traumatic growth. So how we can use the things that happen to us, the adverse things, the traumatic things, the times that we struggle into our testimony, into our growth. So yeah, this is like when we go from being a caterpillar, one version of an insect, to preparing ourselves to going into a cocoon, turning into goo, reconfiguring our entire molecular structure, only to be reborn again as something completely new. This concept of post-traumatic growth is what helps you turn from a caterpillar to a butterfly. So let's get into it. So trauma has many different layers and different types, but it can simply be defined as an emotional response to a terrible event. So basically, the events we experience as trauma and the effects that those events have on our lives are completely based on the individual and how they regard those events at that particular time or later on. So you may see something as a kid that you don't really understand or know how to process at that time. But as you grow up, as you learn, and this may not even be like super conscious, but that event that you witness can have a traumatic effect on you as you go through life, the more that you understand in different ways and affect you in negative ways that you may not even be completely conscious of, because trauma depends on how we regard the event at any given time. So if we're like, yeah, this is totally fine in the moment, but then later it's like, oh my God, that was actually horrible, that's still trauma. So most of society considers like soldiers and heavy combat action in wartime a traumatic experience. And that's how psychologists and the DSM defined it for a very long time. So we're traditionally understanding as a society of that kind of experience, like a combat action in wartime where people are dying and fast-paced decisions, loud noises, like we're typically understanding of that kind of experience, the toll it takes, and how people can react to it as trauma. But so much can be considered trauma, like a high school breakup. For some, it's just like a milestone in life, but for some people, it's traumatizing enough to reject the entire idea of dating, like at all, any potential partners for over a decade because of that individual's experience with that other person in that breakup, how they were feeling after, the support they had, all of that matters. And we're not as accepting of it when we see it in ourselves and in others because we don't always recognize it as trauma. But this is why in 1980, psychologists changed the definition of trauma in the DSM to account for this key discrepancy. So, trauma is the response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope. It causes feelings of helplessness and it diminishes their sense of self and their ability to feel a full range of emotions and experiences. And this trauma can result when an individual directly experiences an adverse event, witnesses that event, or learns about it from others. So basically, that means, yes, again, that trauma is based solely on the individual and how they experience it, but there are also tiers to trauma. So, like the primary tier is when you actually experience it. Like you're there in real time, it's happening to you, and it's primary. Yeah. And then the second one is the secondary trauma of when you're either witnessing an event or learning about it from others. I mean, think about if you're in school and you witness a fight or, God forbid, a school shooting, that is still traumatic to you. You may have like the primary version of it if you were in the room or were actually got shot, or maybe you didn't show up to school that day and you just heard about it. Like that's definitely secondary trauma because people are acquainted with the area you're in has all experienced that level of trauma that you now see and understand in a different way. And then I add the tertiary trauma, which is, I like to see it as the generational trauma, the effects that have really played a toll on your family or your generational line and how you can grow up or come into the world with a certain level of trauma just based on your ancestors' experiences. And they've done studies about this with descendants of the Holocaust and the just innate trauma and feelings of fear and helplessness, even from birth. So I haven't seen any studies on African Americans and the trauma that was placed on our psyches and our bodies just from American slavery. But you can guess that that also takes a toll, and there's definitely some tertiary trauma in there. So, all that to say, even if you don't directly experience an event, it can still be traumatic to you, and you can still have effects of that showing up in your life. So, as humans, we all have a spectrum of experiences that we would personally consider traumatic or not traumatic to us. And basically, that equates to like a tolerance level, if you will, of stressful, distressing events. And your individual tolerance level of the stress that you experience is directly correlated to being able to go through post traumatic growth and actually sustain the growth from it. So, managing your stress, like how you can actually recover, how you deal with stress, and just like making sure it's under your maximum threshold is actually what gives you the capability to grow from your stress and grow from your traumatic events. So, one of the reasons that I love pleasure so much and teaching about it and coaching on it and prioritizing it is not because it's like this frivolous thing that's a luxury that we just do for fun and like everybody doesn't have the access to it. It's like, no, it's exactly the opposite. Like, our pleasure is actually what sustains us in this world because the hormones that we release from pleasure and experiencing pleasure and actually having that joy in our lives, those hormones actually decrease cortisol, which is the stress hormone in the body. So when we have pleasure and incorporate that in our lives, we can actually decrease the stress that we have in our bodies so we can better manage not only stress, but anything that comes our way. Like, just think about how your brain works and how you spend your time when you're stressed out. Like, you're focused on a bunch of things that don't matter. You can't really focus on what does. You keep thinking about the future and worrying what can possibly happen. You're replaying the past and going over what did happen and how things would be better if they just happened a different way. So you're arguing with reality and you're not in the present moment. So you're not even trying to work on the reality that you're currently experiencing. Like, it's a lot. So just being able to manage that stress through pleasure and actually bring those levels down is what actually allows us to experience growth and to be able to see a positive side and get positive results and positive outcomes and positive changes that last from the adverse experiences that we have and the stressful things that we go through. So, prioritizing your pleasure is actually a form of self preservation. Okay, and I've mentioned it a few times, but what actually is post traumatic growth? So, post traumatic growth refers to people who, after experiencing trauma, may remain emotionally affected, but their sense of self, their views on life, their priorities, their goals for the future, and their behaviors have all been reconfigured in positive ways in light of their experiences. So, post traumatic growth acknowledges the capability of people to find pathways to reverse the destructiveness of trauma and turn it to their advantage. So basically, post traumatic growth is like a secret weapon that we can use to actually learn and grow from our experiences without being like completely bent to their will. I'm sure we've all met the people who have been through something traumatic, but can't seem to let it go. Like, it becomes the thing that defines their life, and to the point where they can't be anything outside of that. So that trauma then like dips into every single aspect of their life. It becomes like how they show up in work, how they show up in relationships, what opportunities they go after, what types of things they do, how they spend their time. All of that then becomes affected by this event that they experience. Now, your ability to experience post traumatic growth is, of course, just like we just talked about, related to how well you manage your stress, but also related to how well you are socially supported and the other events going on in your life. Like, if you've had kind of how many multiple events that you consider traumatic happening and the frequency of them in a certain period of time, and how well you manage your stress in and around those situations before, during, and after. So, all of that plays a role into if you're even able to engage in this right away. If you aren't able to engage in post traumatic growth, And again, this is something to talk with a therapist or a coach about, but there is some healing work that you can do to be with your body, to be with your trauma, to learn how to manage your stressors and the way you react a little better before you can start changing the way that you see a situation to have those long lasting growth effects. But post traumatic growth kind of sits in three pillars. And those pillars are one, life is uncertain. So basically, in a nutshell, shit happens outside of our control. And accepting that as just a tenet of the human experience goes such a long way. There's so much out of our control. We can't decide how everything's going to go down to a T with complete certainty. It just doesn't work like that. There's so many other factors and variables and things that come into play and things that we never even knew were happening or could happen or whatever the case may be. So just even accepting that life is uncertain and we will just have these uncertainties in life and we have to live with the ambiguity of not knowing, that goes so far for your mental health to just accept that life's uncertain and things are out of our control. The second pillar is psychological mindfulness. So, having the self awareness and the understanding that we do have control, we do have power to a certain extent, and that is the power over ourselves, the power over our minds. So, just knowing that our thoughts are what create our feelings what drives our actions, and our actions are what create the results in our lives. Again, this is a balance because we don't have control over other people, life events, what's happened in our histories, in our families, what's going on in our country. Like all of that, we have a very limited amount of control over, but we do have control over our own minds. And like juxtaposing that idea that we don't have control outside of us, but we do have the self-awareness to have control of what happens inside of us and how we respond and react to those external factors. That's the beautiful balance. And then finally, the third pillar of post traumatic growth is the acknowledgement of personal agency. So basically, knowing and understanding that our choices are our choices, we understand those. We have the right to make any choice we want, but every choice has a consequence, whether that be positive, negative, or neutral. And just knowing that our choices lead to consequences and we own all of that. So, post traumatic growth can lead you to learning more about yourself, learning more about how you process different events, how you process trauma, how you see life, how you see yourself, how you see other people. It really allows you to grow and change in ways that you never would have expected because, of course, we don't see ourselves as experiencing the bad shit and then being able to come out of it a different way. We don't usually look at our lives like that, but that's why trauma can be a wake up call or an alarm system from our body calling us to reflect on what our minds fix on. So that's really another way to describe trauma is just replaying events and trying to expect or predict outcomes based on what our mind is fixated on. Oh, I had one quote for y'all from Viktor Frankl, and it kind of goes along with the second pillar of post-traumatic growth, the psychological mindfulness. But Viktor Frankl said, Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. One must have a reason to be happy. Once the reason is found, however, one becomes happy automatically. So that's not to say that happiness is outside of you and you have to go out and find it extrinsically. It's more to say that you get to create any reason to be happy. You just have to know what it is. Like it could be, I woke up today, or I'm sure you probably heard my dog running around and playing with his toys, but I have the best dog in the world. And once we find that reason, whatever it is, we do become happy automatically because we're thinking about what makes us happy. We're thinking about what will make us happy. And we're driving towards that or allowing ourselves to experience that in the present. So it's this ability to be self aware enough to know that you do have power over your emotions and how you feel, and that you do not have to stay in suffering forever. You can choose to do the work to become happy. So, yeah, post traumatic growth not only repairs poor mental health, but it improves positivity and it helps people flourish. So, research shows that post traumatic growth is related to fewer mental health problems, lower levels of depression and suicidal thoughts, and higher levels of positivity. So, actually learning how to take your traumatic events and grow from them leads to happier, more positive lives. So we can't choose what happens to us. That's part of the first pillar of knowing that life's uncertain. There's so much that's out of our control. So we can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose what we make it mean to us. Again, that second part of psychological mindfulness. So once we see what cards were dealt, what happens to us, then we decide what we make it mean to us. Then we can decide, now this is the third pillar, what we want to do about it. This is where we have autonomy over our choices and the consequences of those choices. And we're cognizant that what we do leads to a certain consequence of our outcome. So when we experience the world, when we experience traumatic events or distressing events or whatever life throws at us, do we hide ourselves away from the world, lash out, or blame others? Or do we find the silver linings? Do we grow? Do we become more autonomous of our own decisions and what we can do? It's really up to you. And there's no right or wrong choice here. It's just letting you know that you do have a choice. You get to pick whatever you want. And any option that I didn't even mention here today, there's literally so many options. It's limitless what you can decide to do with the cards you're dealt and the things that you're faced with and how you want to handle them. But the point is that you do have choice. So, what do you want to do with it? And if you're looking for my opinion, I would say that your first step is to find the joy, find the pleasure in your life. It's not something that you have to work for. It's not something that you do stuff to then deserve. It's not something that you put on the back burner and when everything else is done, then you get to experience it. No, it's pleasure is your right. Pleasure is a form of survival and self-preservation. Pleasure is more than survival, but it is like the keys to thriving because your pleasure is what allows you to detox from your stress. Your pleasure is what allows you to see the beauty in yourself and the beauty in the world. Your pleasure is what allows you to build resiliency. It's what allows you to keep being able to experience life and roll with the punches instead of getting beat down by them to the point where you can't get up again. Pleasure has you bouncing up quick as hell and ready for more. So, if you're looking for ways in which you can find more pleasure, of course, I'm your girl. We can talk about how we can work together one on one in a 6 month container where we transform your entire life. We focus on your pleasure, how you can create more of it, where it's lacking, and why. And y'all will be surprised and amazed. My clients are always amazed at how far reaching this work goes in your life. It literally touches every aspect, whether that be work, career, money, relationships, familial, platonic, romantic, your own trauma healing, your own mental health, literally everything, the way you relate to yourself, your body image, all of that gets touched by focusing on your pleasure. So, yeah, I still have some spots open. If you'd be interested in that, you can go to the link in my bio and schedule a consultation so we can see if we're a great fit to work together and get the ball rolling there. I also have a new offer that I have been working on. I'm very, very excited about it. I am not going to tell you all the details yet, but I did just want to let you know there is something coming for everyone who's like, oh my gosh, you only do 6 month programs. I need something shorter than that, or I just want a one off. Well, y'all, this is for you. So stay tuned because that is coming. And I just wanted to also give credit to one of the books I read that I referenced a few times or got some of my information from this episode. So that is What Doesn't Kill Us: The New Psychology of Post-Traumatic Growth by Stephen Joseph, PhD. So if you want to learn more about this concept, dive deeper, I highly recommend this book. And there are a ton of others, but primarily this is the one that I've been working with most recently and the one I got a lot of information from this episode. So with that, I want y'all to really focus on when I say the word, traumatic event, what comes up for you? And just sit with that for a second, see what emotions that you have associated with it. And I want you to just work with it a little. Looking at it from the lens of the 3 pillars of post traumatic growth, that life is uncertain, psychological mindfulness, and the acknowledgement of personal agency. I want you to take each one of those and flip that lens on your traumatic experience and just see, as a starting point, what looking at it from the lens of post traumatic growth can do for your experience of that traumatic event. And I'd love to hear how that exercise goes for you. So shoot me an email, DM me on social. I would love, love, love to connect with you and hear how this work is going for you. But with that, I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, my friends.
Hey, friends.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Pleasure Priority Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If it's your pleasure, check me out on Instagram at Amber Taylor Coaching and my website, www.ambertaylorcoaching.com, for more on increasing your pleasure across all aspects of life. As always, make sure to follow the show and check back each week for a new episode. I'd also love it if you'd leave an honest rating and review, and if you'd share the show with anyone else you think would benefit. Much love. Talk soon, friends.